full-on platform, ready for a shed, a barbecue, a middle-aged alcoholic, a dog, garden. Yeah, all kinds of things. I'm gonna show you how to build it. Alright guys, so I'm gonna be building a shed foundation here today, just right here. There's a bunch of mulch in the way, so I'm gonna start by prepping the site. Then we're gonna put in some gravel, I'm gonna tamp that gravel, and then we're gonna put in some deck blocks. So stay tuned. Also on this project, a tool of mine died, so we're gonna do a moment of silence, but in time lapse. Thankfully, I keep it back up. Okay, so as far as these foundations are concerned, there's two terms that we're going to have to familiarize ourselves with, and by we I mean you. And what that basically means is, at what depth does freezing temperature affect the soil? And that'll be different for every state. So here we're in Arizona, so you can figure that frost depth is pretty shallow, but I'm from Montreal, Canada, and frost depth up there will go up to 4 feet deep. So that means if you want your foundations to not be affected by heave and thaw, basically the idea that when water freezes it expands, then you have to go 4 feet deep. Now that being said, this is a shed, it's not a house, so I don't care about frost depth. I'll let it wave a little bit. What I do care about is undisturbed soil. So undisturbed soil is basically just when you dig to the point where you know that nobody has dug below that point. Probably, I'm not really sure exactly what the definition is, but I can show it to you here. So this is how I've gotten down to it, and you see, like here, I'm pulling up beer bottles and stuff. I'm pulling up gaskets, but here now I'm getting to a point on this side where it's just raw dirt. There's no contaminants, there's no nothing, and to me that says that's undisturbed soil. So for the case of this shed foundation, we're just going to go to undisturbed soil, and then I'm going to put some gravel underneath that, and we're going to put our foundations on undisturbed soil, but we're not going to trouble ourselves with frost depth. Okay, so let's step away from our shed project here for a second and check on these bad boys. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that you have to smoke ribs and drink beers to get a good foundation done. I don't dig with a shovel much. I dig with a claw hammer. They feel like claw hammers, they allow you to get in, and it's much more precise. And honestly, I think it's less effort. Alright, so I've got the base set up here. This is how this goes. And I'm about to put the top boards on. Okay, so the placement for this is basically the distance from the fence. So I measured the distance from the fence at about 11 1/4 on each side. And I put one screw in each. That means that they can still kind of pivot and rack. And that next one I'm going to do is I'm going to measure this in a diagonal. So this measure to this side, and then the other measure to the other side. And then that's what's going to make this thing square. So I want the X measures to be the same measure on both sides. Okay, so I've got my 2 boards on each edge screwed in, and I put in all these middle boards, and then I did a board to kind of this center one here, because there's about a 2-inch gap left over once all these boards were in. So, and I put it in the center just because I think it looks better. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fasten all of these boards in here, and I'm going to use my straight edge, and I'm going to make a line, and I'm going to come back in, and I'm going to rip this with my circular saw, and then all the sides will be super even. Okay, so you can see I've got my screws in and I've got this edge cut, but I wanted to show you this side before I cut it. So my strategy is that I basically have this board and this board, which are like my finished sizes, and then I come in and I make a mark and I cut along that mark, and that leaves me with like a very straight looking edge, almost as if I planned it out. And then the way I position the boards, I call it smiley side up. You see the grain? So this grain, this board over time is going to try to straighten this grain out. That means the board's going to go like this, and it's going to go into like a cupping shape. And you want it to cup away like this so that water can drain off of it and not puddle inside of it. Alright, so here it is, you guys.